Can you guess what we're going to talk about today? Yeah, we're going to talk about Fallout. There's an idea that I've done to death myself, but I'd really like to see become a standard feature of most Bethesda's games. And I think there's no game better to do it with than Fallout. Now, how many times have I created a faction and allowed the player to basically build it up from nothing? Or done something in it that makes it better. It isn't just quests, go here, do that mission, go here, do that question. You're actually building it up. I think the best one I ever did was for Fallout 3, and it was the Foundation mod. Sadly, the nav mesh bug, which was never fixed in that game, stopped it from actually getting anywhere because loads of locations, you enter, you leave, you re-enter, all the things are broken. You'd have to reload your game every time you left the room. So the whole thing was done for nothing. But that was a fine example of what I would like Bethesda to do in most of their games. So what am I talking about? Well, you imagine, right, you wanted to set up, say, a group of bandits or an order of knights, or maybe, something in Fallout along the lines of the Ghoul Club. And then you could, basically, You'd establish a little settlement like you do in Fallout 4, and then you'd decide who you wanted to populate it, what kind of settlement it would be. From that point on, you get to develop it in every aspect. Now, who would I choose to do it? Well, I think I'd probably choose the guy that did the Fallout 4 settlements and Heathfire, and probably the people that were doing the Thieves Guild quest, and probably the people who were doing the Dark Brotherhood quest lines in all Bethesda's games, because they're always the best ones, and combine their skill set to produce the settlement that I'm talking about. This way you could have a list. You could have a list whether you would be Dark Brotherhood, whatever, Minutemen, anything he likes, the Commonwealth, and then you could pick the theme. It would list all the objects you could use from that based on the game itself, because obviously you wouldn't get high-tech stuff in the wilderness, would you? Because where would you get it from? Have manufacturing facilities where you could produce armour for the faction you're in. So if you wanted them to be Dark Brotherhood, you could have Dark Brotherhood uniforms made by the machine in question. You put make 10, bam, done. Give them to your characters and they all start looking the part. Machinery needed to do that could be built up over time, could be researched, just like I did in the Foundation mod. So you could start out simple. You could start out fairly small and go from there. So if you imagine, say you start out with just one of those, wilderness made guns, right? Like you get in the Mojave Desert and stuff like that. And then you worked up to something like a Gatling laser. How would you do that? Well, first of all, you'd start with your normal gun, right? You'd get a few components to do the research with. You'd research these components, find out how these components work, and then you start making things with these components. This would unlock more research and more things you could build in your base. And only once you've built everything would you unlock the entire research tree. So we're talking about a selection of craft materials, a selection of items you can find that you could reverse engineer, in order to leap ahead in some areas. And scientists which you'd have to hire to do this, or people with a scientific aptitude. Doesn't necessarily have to be a scientist in the wilderness. But, oh yes, I was in my lab for 300 years. So that's why I'm a bit roasty or toasty. But anyway, so you get someone with a scientific aptitude, and their skills would improve in that area as they were doing this research. They'd get better at it. So if you left the person in charge there for long enough, they'd become an expert at research. And of course, you get attacks against your settlement from factions that don't like your faction. So they might kill a few men, might kill your researcher. You might have to start again with a new researcher who wasn't as good, but was having to research high-level stuff, which would completely mess you up. Because if you think about it, a newbie trying to research laser weapons might take a bit of time to catch up with that. So you could do all this. So you've got your uniforms, you've got your research, you've got your technology trees. You've chosen what faction you want to be. Now combine it all. Add the quest to it now. Who are their enemy? Who don't you like? Who should be their enemy? Now you could do that simply by looking at whoever you've got down on the... whoever you've been shooting at the most in the game, the ones you constantly kill, they don't like you. That's your enemy. You've chosen it that way in a very natural way. and then do a Radiant AI quest to spawn quests at that faction. So if you're always attacking bandits, then your quests are against bandits. And if you're doing something else, then your quests are against something else. Modders could supply quest lines for anything you wanted, regarding background stories, but you could always pad it out with background story based on who you choose, what you like, who's hired, basically. If you keep hiring bandits, then your story's going to be a very bandit-like story. If you keep hiring good guys, then it's going to be a good guy type story. You could even, in a way, have a kind of like futuristic Knights Templar. A group of people that train hard, take a vow of celibacy, and then protect travellers on the road. That kind of thing. So there's all kinds of paths you could go down for it. But the whole thing would be a settlement-based system where you get to fine-tune the settlement to what you want it to be. You put your faction in that settlement with its research rooms and its labs and its barracks and things like that, all in there, just like I did in the Foundation mod, and take it from there. I think you'll agree that if you had that option, you'd be completely absorbed. Now, why would I suggest this thing? Well, I made 2 mods for Kvatch Rising and Kvatch Aftermath. Kvatch Aftermath was the first Kvatch mod made that restored the town. The ones that were in production before that stayed in production for another 2.5 years and never really got released until way after Kvatch Aftermath was really developed and finished. So anyhow, people used to complain that wasn't a lore mod, but they loved it. Why did they love it? Because you could customise people in the town. You could customise the town in many ways as well. So people loved that aspect of the gameplay, and it is still one of their favourite Kvatch mods today. Kvatch Rising was strictly lore, didn't have the customisation options. It is not as popular as Kvatch Aftermath, despite being the better lore mod. People were demanding a lore mod for Kvatch. I gave them one, and it was not as popular as the one that wasn't a lore mod, simply because of the customisation options. It was like a giant house mod. And this is the point I'm trying to make with this idea for Fallout or any Bethesda game. As long as you can customise what you're doing and you're in control of it, it will be a popular idea. Because at the end of the day, people love that kind of gameplay. Being able to choose your path, to do things. Because you imagine, right, I might think of some pretty ordinary things, but some weirdo out there is going to find a really weird way of customising their little faction and make it into something else. You could have a bunch of witches or something, right? But I'm actually pointing out that you could go in any direction you like. Any direction. You can make it into anything you like. And even if the uniforms that Bethesda supplied for your men weren't suitable, you could still get a mod that adds uniforms and just use that uniform on your people. So you could customise your people that way using mods. So the mods would add to it as well. The mods would make it even better. So once you get away from the standard, this is your faction, this is your city or town, this is your equipment, your research tree, you start adding modded guns, modded armour, modded this, modded that, it suddenly becomes a lot more customisable and a lot better and a lot more unique. And it says, this is you. And this is what players really like in my experience. They like that kind of gameplay. The quests and stuff like that are just what you put on the top of the cake. That's the icing on the cake. It's what makes it special. You have to give them something to do. It's not enough just to have them there. So, I guess Bethesda could supply the quests, and if they do anything like the Thieves Guild quests, it would be great. But of course, having the ability to add more quests to the faction, like any modder could do, that would just make it brilliant. It'd go from great to brilliant. Anyway, let me know what you think, right? Whether you actually think it's a good idea. Because I've been doing these kind of ideas now for since 2006. It's when I started with Kvatch. And they've always been popular. People have always liked them. I don't really see a downside to it. And I think from a gameplay point of view, it expands on the settlement features of Fallout 4. Adds to it the NCR mod, kind of style features, and the Foundation mod, which was all of them put together anyway. So yeah. So if you want to know what the Foundation was, it's based on Asimov's book, The Foundation, where they were rebuilding from scratch after the fall of the world. So it was very much along the lines of what Asimov was writing about. But the NCR mod, right, and Kovacs Aftermath, put them together and you pretty much got what I'm talking about here. Just like, subscribe, let me know what you thought of the video, and I'll see you in the next one.